Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar on hiring trends in East Africa. East Africa is a booming hub for development activity and a priority region for most leading aid donors and organizations. A few facts we've gathered from our own analytics show that 4 out of the top 10 locations for job postings on Devex this year have been in East Africa, in Kenya, Tanzania, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. Over 10% of all the job postings on Devex are located in East Africa, and 3 out of the top 10 locations for Devex members are also in the region, so there are a lot of global development professionals who are based there. Knowing this, we wanted to ask, what are the job opportunities and what new career paths are emerging for both locally based and international staff? What skills and qualifications do you need to stay competitive now and in the future? I'm Kelly Rogers, Assistant Editor here at Devex, and I'll be your moderator for this discussion today. I'm joined by Helen Kongongo and Julie Smallwood to help answer and shed some light on these questions.
So Helen is the Regional Director of Human Resources for RTI Africa. She has over 13 years of senior-level HR experience working within diverse multicultural settings in both the profit and not-for-profit sector in Africa. At RTI, she serves as the Senior Human Resources Generalist and Advisor in the Nairobi office and provides strategic support services to regional projects and activities in human resource strategy and workforce planning, operations and admin, employee relations, organizational development, and performance management. So Helen, we're really glad to have you. And Julie Smallwood is a recruiter for international health and development for ICF International. She has more than 10 years of experience in talent acquisition for international development activities and additional 3 years of experience implementing internationally focused projects. And her strengths include full life cycle recruiting for professionals at all levels, developing recruitment strategies, and knowledge of recruiting best practices. So welcome to you both, and we're really happy to have your expertise on today's panel. All right, with all of that said, I'd love to open it up to Helen so that she is able to start her presentation.
Thank you, Kelly, and thanks to everyone for the patience. I'm glad to have this forum to engage with you and to connect also with Julie in discussing what could be the reason behind the peak in hiring activities that we are seeing in East Africa. I would like to discuss this from a broad context. I think for me it's important that we understand the driving factors and then move on to identify how at individual level we can pursue the opportunities that are available in East Africa. So to start us off, I would like to indicate that in my humble opinion, we have four given priority partners in development. We have the host government, we have funding agencies, we must have a need or an opportunity for both the host government and funding agency to operate. And then fourthly, we must have the drivers, the foot soldiers. These are the implementers of our projects or activities at the field level. So in a very simplistic representation of that, I have before you a chart that demonstrates the cyclic nature of development work. And I think this is not unique to East Africa. I think this is a factor in any area where development happens. We have the donor or the funding agency. We have a need that has been identified. We have the host government who has to endorse and bless our activities. We have the implementers, the organizations that we work for. And at the center of all this, of course, is the beneficiary. So I would like to view each of these subsections and see how they relate to the hiring, the peak in hiring activities that we are seeing in the East African region. The first key partner, in my view, are the funding agencies. It is visible now that we have a good number of funding agencies in the East African region. In Kenya, USAID has had a partnership with the government of Kenya for over 50 years. This is as old as Kenya is. We have other key players who have joined in development work. We have the UK aid. We have other players, traditional players. We have non-traditional players like the European Commission. We have seen the Kenyan government get into bilateral agreements with non-traditional funders like China as a government. But what does this mean for you and me? I think it portends opportunity. We have people who have resources and are willing to invest resources in our country or third region for the development of our people. When there are resources available, then there are greater opportunities for you and me to support in the implementation of project activities. We also note that East Africa has a regional hub by USA specifically, and we've also seen other donors beginning to penetrate the East African market. UKAID, for example, has shown its interest in the East African region. We have seen it move into Tanzania specifically and provide support and invest in small-scale tea farmers. It has invested significantly in the stock exchange, improving the stock exchange of Tanzania, etc. So when we have organizations or funding agencies willing to come into the sub-region and invest, it again provides opportunity for you and me. The other critical avenue for penetration of the funding agency, and in my view, this has affected the hiring trends that we see, is that the funding agencies have strategically and deliberately developed policies or strategies around sustainable programs. We have seen and heard of USAID Forward, for example. These are programs that are looking for a more impactful partnership, a sustainable implementation of projects at a meaningful scale. So the strategic plans of our donors are in harmony or in concert with what you would say are the blueprints, development blueprints by countries. Kenya has the Vision 2030. A lot of the areas that Kenya hopes to improve on are areas that donors would support. Health, for example, access of health care for everyone, education. So what does this say for you and me again? That as donors cooperate with host governments and deliberately structure strategies to support host governments, we find opportunities as implementers and as the human resource in the region to go in and make our impact. Another interesting development is the regional approach to program development. We have heard of programs that are not implemented in one country, but are cross-border projects. The East, Central, and Southern Africa Health Community Project, based in Arusha, is one such project. We have shared themes across the country. The issues that affect Kenya are the issues that affect people in Tanzania, in Ethiopia, in Uganda, Rwanda, etc. So as the client provides funding and complements and supports implementers in rolling out projects, we are seeing that the programs are no longer restricted to certain borders, but are cross-border projects or activities. And hence, you and me, as a human resource in the sub-region, should be able to apply ourselves and utilize these opportunities for our own development. When we look at the second key player, the host government, I think this is such a critical player and a big contributor to the trends that we are seeing in East Africa hiring today. The host government is critical because they endorse all the development programs, whether it's through a bilateral or such like agreement. Without the host government endorsement, the clients, the funding mechanism, and the implementers cannot roll out programs. You have noted, for example, where we have hostile governments, implementers have not been able to work. There are countries where implementers have been chased out. So the role of the host government is critical. In East Africa, in fact, in sub-Saharan Africa, we have over 17 countries that by 2013 celebrated 50 years of independence. For you and me, that is an indicator, or should be an indicator, let me say, of matured governments. Governments that have been able to go through the initial teething problem, that have gotten over the issue of colonization and have been able to stabilize their economies. The NGO communities in all the host countries where we exist in the sub-region of East Africa have legislation that supports local NGOs, non-government organizations. So for implementers like yourself and myself, it is an opportunity for us to implement, drive programs with the support of the host government. We are unlikely to be thrown out of a country or face hostile reception in a sub-region because the government has endorsed our programs, because we are partnering with the host government workers to implement our programs. We have also seen a relative stability of the countries, economies of the countries that exist in sub-Saharan Africa. If you look at my chart, you notice that there has been growth or projected growth in the economies of the East Africa region. At least all countries have a projected increase in their GDP. They have been able to manage, and I say manage, relatively manage, their inflation rate. They have had relatively stable local currencies. And this has provided an opportunity to attract investment. Investment may come through our funding partners and may also come from private sector. We may have direct investment coming in from private sector or private sector players. For you and me, we see an opportunity for employment or employability, because where you have stability, you have an ability for organizations to be stable, to employ, to have a meaningful and lasting impact in the work that they do. Another important point of the host government is where we have a shared purpose. The countries in East Africa recently signed up for the East Africa Community Pact. This is a regionalization pact that provides for cooperation, provides a platform for host countries to negotiate, to dialogue across common themes. And as we speak, one of the key themes has been around trade, providing an opportunity for fair trade across the countries in the East African community. Our funding partners have shown support for this cooperation. USAID, for example, is supporting the East Africa community on projects that support trade. We have a Trade Africa partnership with member countries such as Tanzania, Rwanda, Kenya, Burundi, and this would support our activities at a regional level, would support our host governments, even at individual levels, to implement programs that have an impact. When you have an impact, you have sustainability. When you have sustainability, we are able to continually, as human resources, impact, influence change for a long time. I've mentioned in advance that we have shared purpose. Our issues are poverty, our issues are health, our issues are around education and agriculture, etc. Host governments have realized that they also need to come together to address some of these common issues. Recently in Kenya, the government of Kenya hosted East Africa regional presidents and even extended an invite all the way to Nigeria and got these presidents to sit around table and discuss insecurity. So where there is a common purpose and where the host government commits to support the funding mechanisms and support the programs being implemented, then we see the peak in recruitment activities, because projects don't run by themselves. We need the human resource. We need you and me to run the programs. Another important component that comes with the host government is the growth that we have seen over the 50 years of independence. Governments have matured. We see that the governments do struggle or have struggled, especially on issues of governance. But in the same light, we are seeing a determined effort to improve how we do things. There's improved governance structures within our government offices, in ministries of health, ministries of education, etc. We have investments in resources. IT, for example, is now a key priority. Each ministry is making an effort to invest. What does it say for you and me? As implementers, we know that host governments need support for capacity building, for knowledge sharing. This comes from you and me. This comes from the development partners. This comes from the implementers. So when we see a peak in hiring trends, it is partly informed by the development that our governments are undertaking. If we could move on, I would also like to talk about the evolution of the local NGOs. I think the local NGOs have in the past played a secondary role in development activities. Often we have the international not-for-profit coming in, winning the bid, and then perhaps giving a grant to the local NGO. But in the recent past, my view is that the local NGO is beginning to take on a more critical role in development. The local NGO is on the ground with the beneficiaries of the work that we do. The local NGO has had its capacity built over time to be able to pursue funding opportunities. So what does it say for you and me? This provides an opportunity for our support and knowledge transfer beyond the comfort that we exist in. We work within the international not-for-profit. We are exposed to big systems. We have, empowered and delegated opportunities. But we have a role as implementers to pass that knowledge, to pass that skill, and perhaps even commence seeing our role beyond the international not-for-profit and move towards the local NGOs. Organizations like PSI International, have a registered local NGO now in Kenya, going by the name PSI Kenya, registered as a local NGO. The skill force there, the human resource within that organization is not substandard in any way. It's the same folks that we got from the international office, now moving to provide high quality level of human resource but to a local organization. So the role of the local NGO cannot be downplayed as we look at the peak in activity, hiring trends. I think lastly on the host government is looking at the desire to have a more inclusive approach. We have had a number of minority groups. In some countries in the region, it has been the girl child. In others, it has been women. In others, it has been, the male child. I mean, it depends on each of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and specifically in the East Africa region. But our programs are also targeting to build the capacity of our minorities, to provide support to organizations that are supporting minorities. If you look at the statistics, the number of women local NGOs in Kenya by 2011 had grown to close to 23,000. And these communities are working directly to empower these minority groups. What does that mean for you and me? Again, it looks at where the opportunities are, spreading our expertise beyond where we exist. The final partner in contributing to the hiring trends that we are seeing is the implementer. And I think I have already alluded to the significant role of the implementer. The implementer, in my view, is the foot soldier. It is you and me. It's the organizations that we work for. So we have the funding. We have the host government endorsement. The implementers are making their skill, are making their impact through the human resources they are deploying. Many organizations have begun to set up regional hubs, whether it's a subset of Africa, like East Africa or Horn of East Africa, or a regional office, like Africa Sub-Regional Office. They have invested their resources because the donor does not fund regional hubs. The organizations themselves have seen it important to bring services from home office to the region, making implementation and service closer to the beneficiary. For you and me, this is an opportunity to apply our skills beyond our own countries, to be able to master or have an appreciation of what happens, what is required, what do I need to do to be able to apply myself beyond my country. Because if we're taking a regional perspective to issues, if the organizations are investing in setting up regional hubs, then for you and me, there's an opportunity there. The implementers have engaged skilled workforce That goes without saying. It is evident from the work that we do. But I think for you and me, it is moving beyond the technical skills and knowledge. It is seeing the level of flexibility, the level of employability of the individuals, the adaptability of the individuals, because development work is unique. Each organization has its way of doing things. Each organization works in different environments. There's some that require rapid mobilization. There are others that require you to switch from your comfort level, move to a situation that is not necessarily what you consider ideal, but to be expected to perform and work at optimal levels. With the East Africa community, we are beginning to see, and I say this cautiously because we still have teething problems, but we are beginning to see the mobility of labor across the East Africa community. Employees from Uganda should easily cross into Kenya and find work opportunities. Same for Ethiopia, Tanzania, and all the other member states of East Africa community. From the implementer, I think there's an obligation to transfer learning, skills, and resources from our home office to our project offices or regional offices. Because the skills transfer is ongoing. It moves from home office to regional office to project office, and from project office it goes all the way to the beneficiary. So when we have organizations that invest in the skills of our human resource at project level, we can see a direct impact on the quality of the work of the implementer. There are opportunities for networking that have grown and continue to exist for employees within the East Africa region. We have roundtables. We have the HR roundtable, for example. We have a finance roundtable that exists. I know in Kenya we do have one, and in Tanzania. But what this says is that even across organizations, we have enough opportunities to leverage on our lessons and learning to improve on the quality of project implementation. The last point on this role of the implementer really is that we do not lack human resource in the East African region. We do not lack skilled labor in the East African region. We have accredited universities, and we have a good number of highly skilled graduates coming out of this university. I think the challenge, in my view, has been getting an opportunity to complement the academic qualifications with actual experience or with continued professional development, so that you eventually grow into your role and provide or find an opportunity for a fit, not necessarily a perfect fit, but a good fit between your career aspirations and the organizations that you seek to join. So in concluding, I think I'd just like to say that as employees and job seekers looking for opportunities within the region, I think it's important that we think of the value of our role, the impact of our role. We have the host government's role, we have the donor role. This is often beyond our control. But what is within our control is what we can do. Secondly, I think we should be willing and ready to seek and pursue opportunities. As said, we have home office passing on knowledge, providing resources, providing us access to systems. As we sit in our project offices or regional offices, what are we doing to broaden our horizon and scope of understanding of this available opportunity? Nothing is going to be handed down to us. We need to seek and pursue those opportunities hungrily. Adaptability and flexibility is key. As I said, the environments that we operate in are interesting. They're dynamic. They can be erratic. We often engage and seek employees who are willing to adapt and be flexible to accommodate the changes that may come from the host government, the client, or even at times the beneficiary of our programs. And finally, I think you need to invest in what you consider is valuable to you. Invest your time, invest your resources. If you think your career is that important, then take time to invest in it. How much are you committing to learn each day? How much are you committing, whether it's actual fiscal resources or human resources, to impart a new skill to others and make a difference in the community. So I'd like to stop there, having provided a really broad, understanding of where I think, in my view, the peak and trends of recruitment in East Africa are coming from. And I'd like to thank you for making time to listen to me today. So I'll hand this back to Caitlin and Kelly. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Helen, for that insight. You made some really important points on some of the larger trends. And I'm sure adaptability and flexibility are two things that ICF also look for in candidates. So I'm going to hand it over to Julie now to find out more.
Thank you, Kelly. And I would like to thank Helen as well. I think some of the points that she raised towards the end of her presentation segue nicely into some of the subjects that I'm going to be speaking on as well. I'd just like to give a little bit of background. As Kelly mentioned earlier, I am the International Health and Development Division Recruiter for ICF International, which is well known in development communities, especially for the demographic and health surveys project, as well as measure evaluation and working on the maternal and child health integrated program and other projects. In Kenya, we do have a large project focused on monitoring and evaluation. So that is primarily what I have been hiring for in the region over the past several years, as well as a number of other smaller activities and certainly proposal efforts. Something that Helen mentioned that I wanted to raise, this is actually my third bullet point on this slide here, so I'll skip ahead. But the East Africa community and the opportunities that presents, I think will really shape and change the way that recruiting and hiring is done in the East Africa region over the next several years. It's really just in its infancy now, but once there is an ability for citizens of other countries to move around, we'll see something very similar to what happened in the European Union when the mobility increased there, where candidates can be sourced really from any other country within the region and not necessarily just focused on the citizens of a particular target country. So that really, I think, increases the excellent pool of candidates that are available and really cuts down on the limitations that we might have to use a local or to stay within certain salary parameters based on citizenship. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that moves forward. But let me jump back up to the top here. So just speaking about hiring trends and how you as job seekers in the region might be able to leverage those into finding, fulfilling career paths. First of all, I want to say that I think monitoring and evaluation and data and knowledge management and sort of overall organizational learning are going to be extremely important. As Helen mentioned, there's no dearth of development projects going on in the East Africa region. USAID has been there for many years. Every donor is there, essentially. It really is a sort of hotbed of development activity. As Kelly mentioned, really at the beginning of this presentation, in terms of the number of jobs that are posted there, the number of job seekers that are involved, that are active on Devex from the region. So there is a huge pool of opportunity for doing things like evaluating those projects and to see if they are meeting the benchmarks and the guidelines and having really the outcomes that we're looking for from the development projects, and see if they're actually meeting the goals of reducing persistent poverty and increasing health outcomes among the most poor in the region. So, so having people with sort of very transferable skill sets that can work in a variety of different technical areas, whether it be health or education or, any other technical area, will be very important. So just in general, monitoring and evaluation, sort of statistical analysis skills will certainly be extremely important, particularly again, working regionally and being able to share information and to share knowledge regionally. That will continue to be extremely important. I mentioned sort of in my introduction that monitoring and evaluation experts in Kenya are really what we have been focused on hiring. Right now, I am currently recruiting for a number of experts with monitoring and evaluation experience for our project in Kenya. Some of the particular areas that we're looking at are reproductive health, malaria control programs, subnational, like county level health capacity building, and orphans and vulnerable children. So I'd be happy to speak offline about any of those particular opportunities, but just to give you a sense of what kind of career paths or positions are currently available in the region. I mentioned East Africa community already, so I will skip over that. And then finally, looking at the private sector and the growth of the private sector in particular, it's really sort of putting the pressure on development projects to be able to maintain the same compensation levels and the same to really attract the best candidates so that we can continue to have them working in the development sphere and not potentially being drawn away by the private sector, which has gotten more robust in the region recently and is offering other opportunities and really more competitive opportunities for the same pool of candidates. So that's something that's going to be a challenge as we're moving forward, and something that I think development funders and implementers need to keep in mind as they're doing some hiring over the next few years. Moving along, some things that I think will be coming along that we should, again, watch out for. The Power Africa is something that I'm sure everybody on this call has heard a lot about, but the Obama administration has really identified it as a key legacy that they want to leave in Africa. So developing talent in all parts of the power sector is really going to be very important over the future couple of months and years as this is really getting rolling along. And that would include things like power generation, distribution, financing, infrastructure development, resilience to climate change, which is perhaps something that isn't necessarily thought of in traditional power development, but certainly as we're all faced with the implications of climate change is something that we'll want to keep in mind. Public-private partnerships and renewable and traditional energy sources, again, trying to marry the traditional energy development sector as well as bringing in some innovative ideas with renewable energy. And then certainly the post-2015 agenda as the Millennium Development Goals are winding down, and there is a lot of discussion about what is the future going to look like, what sort of goals are going to be implemented next, and what are we going to be aiming for. That'll definitely shape the donor strategies. I think certainly, a lot of it's probably not going to be a surprise to us. It'll certainly have to do with health, so we'll have to do a lot with energy in the environment, and then resiliency and sustainability, I think, are going to be the hallmarks that we can be looking for, and really how all of these things link together. So again, in terms of talent development for job seekers, any attempt to integrate these ideas, looking at how climate change is affecting health and how, sustainability can lead to improved health outcomes in the long run, are certainly going to be very important as we're moving forward. And finally, I just wanted to mention that I'm sure, as all of you know, the Devex Addis Ababa Partnership Forum and Career Fair is occurring next week, and I just want to mention that ICF will be participating, so we hope that you all will come and visit us if you are able to attend that forum. And we do have a specific landing page on our website specific to our activities at that forum, which is www.icfi.com/Devex. Thank you. I will turn it back over to Kelly now for some questions and answers.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks for that reminder of the AUDIS forum as well. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in previously, and so I want to just jump right in. Someone has asked, and I know that this is something that both of you have now mentioned, regional hubs, but someone has asked, if I'm interested in working with a specific project, should I reach out to the local office or the home office? And I think this is probably something that either Helen or Julie could speak on.
Well, this is Julie. I'll chime in, and perhaps Helen, if you would like to follow up. I think, you know, in ICF's case, pretty much all of the hiring is done out of the home office. So, you know, there's no harm in trying to contact the local office and trying to get more information. But just keep in mind that you know, organizations are really just organized very differently. So in some cases, there are regional or local recruiters and you know, human resources personnel, and in some cases, it's really a function of the headquarters or, you know, other offices in the corporation or in the, you know, organizational structure. So I think the short answer is it's really just going to vary depending on the company.
All right, thanks, Julie. There's another question. If I want to be considered for a cross-border project, and this is something that Helen mentioned, what types of skills do I need? As this regionalization takes off, I think this person is asking, is that changing the type of skill sets that stand out or that are needed for those types of projects? So Helen, I don't know if you want to jump in here.
Sure, thanks. I'll respond to that. As I mentioned, I think it takes a little more than just a full skill. So if you're an M&E expert, that is definitely a plus, but it's also going to require that you appreciate the culture and context in which you're moving to work. Cultural dynamism can have a big influence on your success. Working at host country and a different country at times requires a bit of flexibility on the part of the incoming employee. So technical skills, yes, that's a positive, but there's need to understand the culture. There's need to have knowledge of the context in which you're going to work. If you're in finance, for example, it helps to have an appreciation of, say, the tax laws that exist within that country. If you're in human resources, you need to understand the legislation around labor in those specific countries. So it requires a little more than just the academics for you to fit, adapt, and be successful in those communities, in the different countries that we seek to go to. One good thing, and just concluding, is that sub-regions seem to have sub-cultures. I say this cautiously, but often you find that, for example, in the East African region, most inhabitants of Kenya, Uganda, South Sudan, and Tanzania speak Kiswahili. It's not a national language in all the 4 countries, but they're able to use this as far as DRC to engage informally and at times even formally. So in sub-regions, you may have sub-cultures, and it's easier for you to move within those sub-cultures than moving out, say, from East Africa to West Africa, where the culture is extremely different. So being aware of that and preparing yourself in readiness for that adjustment is going to support how successful you are in your role. Kelly?
Great, thanks for that, Helen. And I have another question that I think I could use both of your thoughts on. It's, have recent security threats in Kenya and surrounding regions impacted your projects and career opportunities in the region?
This is Julie. Oh, go ahead, Helen.
All right, sorry, Julie.
That's all right.
I was just going to say that we recently had USAID scale down its operations in the Kenya office, Kenya mission office. And there was a lot of talk from implementers. It looked like USAID maybe was considering moving out of Kenya because of the insecurity. We've had a couple of incidents in the recent past. But USAID came out very strongly and indicated the reason behind the structural changes within the mission office, which did not necessarily link to insecurity. But that said, we have seen that project implementation in the northern part of Kenya, where we've had increased criminal activities, terrorist activities, has been scaled down or impaired significantly. When there's high insecurity, organizations are forced to pull out their workers, or the workers cannot work at the scale, at the normal scale or at optimal levels because of insecurity. So the projects that have operated in northern Kenya, for example, have been impacted by the high level of insecurity incidents. The donors have not stopped, however, funding, or I haven't heard in Kenya, for example, a donor pulling out or stopping a project because of insecurity. They have stood with the country, they have stood with the project that they have funded, and I think it's for the host government and for the people of Kenya to manage the insecurity so that the beneficiaries of the project can continue to enjoy the services of the implementers.
This is Julie. I'll just piggyback along that and agree with Helen that there really has not been any change that I've seen in development activities. I think there's a bit of caution. Certainly, there's a lot of review of the situation and trying to analyze it and really keep an eye on how things are developing. But at this point, our activities certainly have not been curtailed. And we welcome the opportunity to continue to be involved as long as the donor organizations are still active in the region. So that's, I think, really the critical question is USAID going to take any steps to curtail activities, and then that might have a trickle-down effect on what our activities would be. But as far as the corporate philosophy towards it is just a wait and see. There are some countries that not in the East Africa region, but worldwide, where security concerns do prevent us from really pursuing work, and that's a decision made based on wanting to protect the safety of our employees. So, I think it's something to keep an eye on, certainly, but not really that bad of an effect at this point in the East Africa region.
Okay, good to know. Thanks for both of your thoughts on that. And Julie, I actually have another question for you. Someone says, I'm new to the M&E field, but I bring skills from the private sector. I'm very interested in working in East Africa. What can I do to stand out? And I'm not sure if this person is referring to standing out on their resume or just with their experience, but maybe you can touch on both.
Sure. I think that the most important thing would be to really highlight the experience in the private sector that's directly, or that can relate directly to the skills that we're looking for in development professionals doing monitoring and evaluation work. So, any types of whether it's quantitative or qualitative analysis experience or skills would certainly be transferable. Again, looking at things that are that sort of have commonalities between the work that has been done in the private sector and the work that we're looking to do on development projects. So certainly highlighting any of those activities on a resume or a cover letter. I always like to recommend cover letters, really looking very closely at what a job requirements or required qualifications are, and really trying to demonstrate how you are, you have skills that exactly fit each of those requirements, whether they be in a sort of traditional development setting or not, is not as important as just having the skills in general. So, so I think that's not something that you certainly don't want to hide the fact that you're sort of new to the development realm. That's going to be very apparent to any recruiter looking at your resume, but in fact, embracing that and embracing the opportunity that you've had to learn things. I mean, it's development isn't all that different from the private sector in some cases in terms of how we want the work to be of very high level, high caliber, and really do work that has positive impacts, and that that there are goals and we're trying to meet the goals. It's not that dissimilar, so I don't think that's really an impediment. It's just something that you have to embrace and try to marry and match up your skills as much as possible with the required qualifications.
Great, thanks, Julie. The next question is, I'm a Kenyan national with over 15 years experience working with local NGOs in my country. I would like to find an international position either in Africa or the Middle East. How likely is it that an organization like yours would hire me? And maybe Helen, you can start, but Julie, feel free to also jump in on this.
Thanks, Kelly. I think an international organization such as RTI or any other would be willing to consider you. So you have as much opportunity as any other applicant. I'll just reference back to what Julie mentioned to the earlier question. I think it's how you present your skills or skill sets in your resume and how those then resonate to the skills that are being sought by this international organization. We have hired from the public service. We have hired from the private sector. We have hired from similar organizations. So opportunities exist. I think it is how you package your skills and present those to the recruiter so that they can see that you can apply. For example, if you're a finance manager and you have used, say, QuickBooks in your local organization, if the international organization is looking for a finance manager, you can demonstrate that you have skills in, SAP or QuickBooks or whatever systems that they also use. You can demonstrate by actual dollar value of budgets that you have managed. You may have received grants from an international organization, but if you are the finance manager of this local organization, you can demonstrate your role in managing the grants you receive. If you have funds coming in from multiple donors. So you had grants from USAID, you had grants from DFID, you had grants from Norwegian organization, EU, etc. That's a plus. Because even as a sub-grantee, you are expected to follow the rules and regulations of the host government, of the donor providing you the funds. So your experience within a local NGO should not curtail opportunities that exist at international space, or working for an international organization, working in Kenya, or working outside the region, including the Middle East, where you desire to go. So it's just how you package this and how you can demonstrate that your skills are really what the recruiter or the international organization is seeking. There are other issues we've talked about, the adaptability. Going to Middle East is not an easy job. So demonstrating that you have the flexibility and the resilience that is going to be required to work in an area like that is also going to add it's going to be a big plus when a decision is going to be made on your candidature. Julie?
Yes, I pretty much entirely agree with Helen. I think it's, again, looking at what experience you have and how you can perhaps scale that up to work on more of a regional level or an international level, or really having almost a lateral move into a similar role in a different country. That's certainly a possibility as well. I think that the more senior you get, perhaps in your current NGO, a lot of NGOs are regional or are international. So I think that's usually how people kind of break into working in countries outside of their own, is working up the ranks within their host of their own country, and then staying with the same NGO, but perhaps being transferred or requesting a transfer to a different office within the region or in a different country. So that's a possibility that that I think is worth exploring as well, in addition to applying for an entirely new job. And once I think what you've kind of actually got the first side of your it is the stuff.
All right, great, thank you. And we have another question sort of related. Someone says, I have many years of experience working in admin and finance for civil society organizations and NGOs. However, I don't have any experience with USAID. How important is this to getting a job with one of your organizations? How can I get a job on a USAID project without that previous experience? So Julie, did you want to start?
Sure. You know, a lot of the procedures are similar across the different donors. There are certainly some differences, you know, need to be completed and which reports need to be turned in and that sort of thing. But on looking at the broader picture, the tasks are essentially the same from an administrative point of view, where you are doing things like managing budgets and perhaps consultant pipelines and keeping track of benchmarks and things like that during the project, turning in reports on time and in the proper format, whatever that format might be. And that's really where you're going to see the differences is, you know, DFID will have different reporting requirements than USAID, than other donors. So I guess, again, focusing on what types of skills you have, whether that be with the USAID project or not, you know, that's, again, not as important, you know, the specific donor experience. In some cases, it might be, and it might really be the case where, you know, the dynamic of that particular project team is that they really, in this role, need somebody with USAID experience. But that's not always the case. So, you know, it's just a matter of finding the right opportunity where perhaps there are other people with extensive administrative experience on USAID projects who could train somebody who's not as familiar with them at the outset.
All right. If I could just add to what Julia said, I'm totally agreement with what she said, but just also to add, looking at what level the person is seeking to join the international NGO from a local NGO, it's, I think, easier at entry level, because at that point you may not necessarily have to have mastered, you know, all the rules and regs, etc. And you would have people then to guide you towards the proper reading or invest time and resources for your training and actual experience to gain familiarity on those requirements. I think it gets a little more difficult the higher you go, because the expectation for the FM's depth of understanding, say on procurement, on finance, as required by the donor, is critical. So for someone like that, my advice would be you think of this as a career move, a career switch in some degree, because you may want to go in at a level not necessarily you would desire. You may go in at entry and get an opportunity to learn and master the ropes, and then gradually progress, having gained the required knowledge. I know admin folks often are involved in procurement of office staff or support the procurement docket in its entirety. If you're going to support funding or report on funding by a donor at the finance manager level, for example, then there's an expectation that you'll have an understanding of what is required by each of the donors, including reporting formats and operations of finance within the donors' rules and regulations. So my advice is for her to seek opportunities. It could be entry-level opportunities. It could be opportunities for learning, you know, formally or informally, volunteering, internship, whatever those small opportunities may be, so that gradually they become familiar and more confident on their USAID or donor expertise. Kelly?
Thanks, Helen. I think we have time probably for one more question, and this one looks like it might be directed to Julie. Someone says, I am a monitoring and evaluation officer for a UN sub-region in East Africa, but I'm struggling in moving my career forward. I'm sometimes said to be overqualified for some jobs I'm applying to and a bit junior for others. Any advice?
That's a tough one without seeing an actual resume, but I think, unfortunately, that is the case, that I do often run into folks who sort of fall into that gray area of being underqualified for some positions that they're looking at and a bit overqualified for others. Again, I think it's a case of, finding the right opportunity is really the challenge. It's not necessarily anything that you can do, although it sounds like you do currently have a position working on UN projects, and if possible, continue working on those and building up your skill sets. If it's a matter of education, in some cases you might be underqualified due to not having a master's degree or something like that. So, so pursuing that opportunity to certainly you want to aim for the ones that you're currently underqualified for. You don't want to try to dumb down to get into the ones that you're considered overqualified for. So it's a question of thinking, how can you build your skills or build your knowledge base and try to gain the additional education, or if it's a training course in specific analyses tools that you can use, that might be helpful. Whatever it is, to sort of jump into the next tier is really the question. And I think there's no harm in asking, if it sounds like you've been applying for positions that you haven't been getting for these reasons. If there is one that they tell you you're a bit underqualified for, there's no harm in asking, well, what could I do to make the difference, to make up that difference so that I would be into the pool of candidates who would qualify for this position. So that could be helpful. Recruiters can really, when they're looking at a resume and a job description, can really point out where the specific gaps are, and that might be helpful in having that conversation, or at least asking about it, to try to advance your career into the next level. Kelly?
Thanks, Julie. Great advice. It looks like we are out of time. And Helen and Julie, I really appreciate your time and insight, and I know that our audience does too. So we're happy to have had you on this webinar. Thank you so much to our audience for joining us today. We really hope that you feel your questions were answered and that you learned something new to help you prepare for a career in East Africa.